Greetings. Well, in today's video, I want to talk to you about the 4 reasons for divorce. This comes from the book, The 7 Principles of Making Marriage Work by Gottman. I think there's some value to this. A lot of people point back to this book for marital things, so it's valuable. And I think there's some truth to what he's talking about here. So there are 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, he says, for people who end their marriage. In his research, he did a lot of study of folks, married folks, in a relatively controlled environment to see how they react. And per his observations, he was able to predict with a high level of accuracy, so he says, which couples would divorce and which ones would stay together. And he had went through a divorce himself, and I think you'll find that a lot of the marriage experts out there have gone through a divorce themselves, and they know how painful and challenging it can be, so they wanted to help others to avoid that same challenge. So let's get into it here. Let's look at these 4 horsemen. The first one is criticism. Now, you're going to have some issues with your spouse. There's just going to be certain things that they do that you don't like. Now, there's a way that you can mention and bring up specific challenges that you have with their way of living or their habits without criticizing them. You can bring it up in creative ways. But if you're always saying, oh, you did this wrong or you did that wrong, and it's high criticism all the time, that's not good for the relationship. Actually, what Gottman said is, he said, in a relationship, in a marriage, I don't like to use the term relationship because I think marriage is where it's at, marriage. In your marriage, if your interactions are any greater than 5 to 1 positive, or is it less? So in every 5 interactions that you have with your spouse, they need to be positive. 4 of them need to be positive. If it goes higher than that, like if it's say a 3 to 2, or if it's a 2 to 3, that is not good for your relationship. So it's really important for you to look at how positive your marriage is. It should be positive, and in your courtship, it should be positive as well. So the second horseman of the apocalypse is contempt, where you're actually attacking the character of the individual. Contempt doesn't work well, because what contempt does is it means that you've given up on them improving their habits or their life, and you say, you're wrong, you're a piece of garbage, what have you. You are attacking them. And when people are attacked personally, it's very difficult for most of them not to retaliate or to defend themselves. And that defense, that actually brings up the 3rd point, the 3rd horseman of the apocalypse, which is defensiveness. You don't want to have a situation where folks are just naturally defensive against one another, especially if it's a marriage. Because if you feel like you have to defend yourself all the time, that's going to push away the love that you were trying to create when you got married to your spouse. And then the 4th and final thing is stonewalling. This is really the beginning of the end of a relationship, where you just emotionally shut down. You do everything that you can to avoid any interactions with your spouse, because you've become so conditioned to believe that it's going to be negative that you don't want to have that anymore. So these are the four the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. These are things that you want to avoid. You need to learn as an individual before you get married how to deal with the things that you want to improve in a positive way without going into negativity and complaining. And timing is important as well. If there are some issues that you have during certain interactions, you can maybe bring it up at another time. You know, don't necessarily have to do it right away. Remember that timing is important. And another key principle is you want to praise in public but correct in private. That's a very good principle to remember. And sometimes just a look or an expression can communicate between your spouse of certain things that you don't like. So I'm not telling you that you should just accept everything about your spouse, but the real important thing is to approach marriage with your eyes wide open and then go through marriage with your eyes half closed. You need to be willing to forgive and to forget and to look at certain things in your marriage and say, is this really worth all the other benefits that we have? If say your wife just doesn't really do that good with making toast, what if she always burns the toast? Are you going to throw your wife out because of something small like that, and she's so good in all these other things, these other aspects of life, and she benefits you in all these other ways? So you have to keep things in perspective and to realize that marriage is the world's greatest self-improvement mechanism. You're with another individual, your husband or your wife, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for the rest of your life. So what are you going to do? Are you going to use that relationship to improve yourself, or are you going to use that relationship to be a cohabit, and are you going to use your spouse as some blaming mechanism why you cannot achieve what you want to achieve in life? No, that's not what a marriage is about. A marriage is about two people coming together that love each other, care about each other, that want to build a family together, create something better than themselves, and for each one of them to look at the things that the other one is saying and improve. So we'll get into that in later videos. That actually moves into a different work of another marriage teacher that I really like, Harville Hendricks. So we'll talk about that in other videos. But if you're looking to find your soulmate, if you're single and you're afraid about marriage and you're not sure if it's going to work for you, visit my website, beyonddating.com, and check it out. There's a lot of good stuff there for you. I'll put the link either above or below my face. Sometimes it's above, sometimes it's below. But there you can get a free copy of my book, The Sacred Bedroom, or excuse me, that's my second book. My first book is The Sex Education You Never Received. You can receive that for free by visiting that link. So I highly recommend that you check it out. And as always, the light in me honors the light in you. Peace.